Everyone in Rosehill Mansion spoke in whispers when she walked by. Vivien Caldwell, the wife of one of the wealthiest men in the state, could make a grown man tremble with just one glance. Servants said she'd fired a maid for breathing too loudly and a gardener for trimming a rose the wrong way. But when a quiet, soft-spoken new maid named Lily Harper stepped into that mansion, no one expected she'd be the one to shatter Vivien's perfect image and make the feared millionaire's wife look utterly ridiculous in front of everyone. If this story touched your heart, show your love. Like, share, and comment your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel. Lily Harper had never worked in a place so large it felt like its own small city. The Rosehill Mansion stretched across acres of manicured lawns, marble fountains, and hedges trimmed into swans and lions. It had crystal chandeliers in every hallway, floors so shiny you could see your reflection, and rooms so big they could fit her entire childhood home inside. But for all its beauty, the place had an air of unease. The staff didn't speak unless absolutely necessary, and when they did, they spoke softly, like someone might be listening. Everyone walked quickly, eyes down, as if trying to avoid being noticed. On her first day, Lily, clutching her small tote bag and wearing her crisp new maid's uniform, was greeted not by a smile, but by a stern middle-aged butler named Gregory. "Rule number 1, he said as he led her inside. "Never speak unless Mrs. Caldwell addresses you first." Lily blinked. "Mrs. Caldwell?" Gregory gave a short, humorless laugh. "You'll know her when you see her. Everyone does." It didn't take long for Lily to find out what he meant. The first time she saw Vivien Caldwell, the woman glided down the grand staircase like she owned not just the mansion, but the air itself. She was tall, with perfectly styled platinum hair, skin so flawless it looked almost unreal, and eyes that seemed to evaluate your worth in less than a second. She wore a silk gown in deep emerald, dripping with diamonds. Vivien stopped halfway down the stairs and looked directly at Lily. "You're new." Her voice was smooth but sharp. "What's your name?" "Lily Harper, Mom." Vivien's eyes traveled from Lily's scuffed shoes to her neatly tied hair, lingering for a moment too long, as if she was deciding whether Lily deserved to keep her job. Then, without a word, she turned and continued down the stairs. Gregory, who had been standing nearby, subtly exhaled in relief. "You survived your first inspection." Over the next few weeks, Lily learned what the other staff meant when they said Vivien was impossible. The woman had an obsession with perfection that bordered on cruelty. If a flower arrangement had a single wilted petal, it was thrown out. If a silver spoon was polished one shade less than blinding, the housekeeper was lectured for hours. But what shocked Lily most wasn't Vivien's impossible demands, it was how everyone accepted them. No one questioned her. No one dared. One afternoon, Lily was dusting the library shelves when she overheard two maids whispering. "They say she once made the chef throw away an entire dinner because the soup was too salty." One murmured, "That's nothing." The other replied, "Last year, she made a gardener cut down all the rose bushes because one had aphids." Lily frowned. "Why doesn't Mr. Caldwell do anything?" she asked quietly. Both maids froze, eyes darting toward the door. "You don't talk about Mr. Caldwell," one hissed, "and you don't ask questions." But Lily did wonder. She had seen glimpses of Henry Caldwell, a man in his late 50s, always in expensive suits, kind-faced but distant. He seemed like the sort of man who might have been warm once, but had learned to keep his emotions locked away. Still, Lily couldn't help noticing the way his eyes looked tired whenever Vivien entered the room. One rainy Thursday, Lily was assigned to serve tea in the sitting room. Vivien was hosting 3 women from the Rosehill Ladies' Society, all equally polished, equally wealthy, and equally obsessed with gossip. As Lily poured tea, Vivien began bragging about a charity gala she was hosting. "Of course," Vivien said with a dazzling smile, "everything must be perfect. People expect it from me. I've never made a mistake." The other women nodded in admiration. That's when it happened. Vivien reached for her teacup, and a large smear of lipstick from her previous sip left a glaring red mark on the porcelain. She didn't notice. But Lily did, and so did the women across from Vivien, who exchanged small smirks. Vivien continued talking, blissfully unaware she was sipping from a cup marked like a scarlet flag. That night in the staff quarters, the other maids were buzzing. "Did you see her? Mrs. Caldwell with lipstick on her cup," one said, barely able to hide her laughter. "She looked ridiculous," another replied. And for once, she didn't even notice. Lily smiled faintly but didn't join in. She wasn't the kind to laugh at someone's expense, even if they were unkind. Still, she couldn't help thinking, it's strange how quickly the untouchable can look human. The turning point came a week later. Vivien was preparing for her big charity gala, the one she'd been bragging about. And the mansion was in chaos. Staff rushed in every direction, carrying trays, polishing silver, arranging flowers. Lily was assigned to oversee the guest cloakroom. It was a simple job: take coats, return them at the end. But halfway through the evening, she overheard two wealthy guests whispering near the door. "Did you hear about the sculpture she's unveiling tonight? I heard it's a fake." "A fake? But she said it's worth millions." "Exactly. Can you imagine if people found out?" Lily's heart skipped. She didn't know if it was true, but if it was, Vivien's entire image would shatter. What happened next would not only make the feared Mrs. Caldwell look utterly ridiculous, but it would also reveal something no one in that mansion had ever dared to say out loud. The rain had stopped just as the last guests arrived at Rosehill Mansion. The marble driveway glittered under the warm lights, and a row of luxury cars stood like a silent parade. Inside, the grand ballroom was bathed in gold light, a string quartet playing softly in the corner, and waiters gliding between tables like a choreographed dance. Vivien Caldwell stood at the center of it all, dazzling in a floor-length gown the color of midnight, diamonds dripping from her neck and ears. She was in her element, a queen among her subjects. Her laughter rang like crystal, her words polished and sharp. At exactly 8:15 she called for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," Vivien began, holding a crystal glass in one hand, "thank you for joining me on this most important night. Tonight I reveal the centerpiece of my personal collection, a sculpture so rare, it is the crown jewel of Rosehill." A velvet curtain stood at the far end of the room, hiding the masterpiece. Guests murmured in anticipation. Cameras from the local society magazine were already clicking. Lily stood in the shadows near the cloakroom door, her hands twisting in front of her. The whispered rumor she'd overheard earlier was gnawing at her. She didn't like gossip, but she also hated the idea of a room full of people being dazzled by a lie. She had seen the sculpture earlier that afternoon while delivering fresh flowers to the ballroom. It was beautiful. But Lily had grown up with a father who was an artist. She knew enough to recognize that the gold leaf was too fresh, the marble too bright. And worse, she had spotted the faint brand mark of a replica company near the base. Vivien didn't know Lily had seen it. The moment came. Vivien swept toward the curtain, her gown trailing behind her. "This," she announced, "is a piece that has inspired envy across Europe, and tonight it is here in my home." As she pulled the rope, the curtain fell away. Gasps filled the air. The sculpture, a life-size depiction of a Roman goddess, stood bathed in soft light. Guests leaned closer, phones rising to snap photos. Vivien smiled like a woman who had just won a war. And then Lily heard a voice, shaky but clear, from the front row. "That's strange," said an elderly man with silver hair and a scholarly look. "I have this exact same piece in my garden. Bought it from a replica dealer in Florence." The room went silent. The Vivien's smile faltered for the first time that night. "I assure you, this is authentic." But the man stepped closer, peering at the base. "Ah, there's the mark, just as I thought. This is from Rossetti replicas, made only 2 years ago." Whispers erupted like a wave rolling through the crowd. Guests exchanged glances, some smirking, some outright laughing. Cameras flashed, not to capture beauty now, but scandal. Vivien's cheeks flushed. That's impossible! Gregory!" Someone must have switched, but her voice was drowned out by the growing noise. People began to turn away, suddenly far less interested in her grandeur and far more entertained by her humiliation. Lily hadn't spoken a word. She hadn't needed to. But as she stood quietly near the door, she caught Henry Caldwell's eyes from across the room. For the first time, the man smiled, a small, almost imperceptible smile of relief. Later that night, after the guests had gone and the mansion was nearly silent, Lily returned to the cloakroom to gather her things. She didn't expect anyone to be there, but Henry was waiting. "You knew," he said quietly. Lily hesitated. "I overheard something, and I saw the mark. I didn't tell anyone. I just thought people should know the truth." Henry studied her for a moment. "You're braver than you realize. Most people, dear, including me, have been letting her play this game for years." "She's your wife," Lily said softly. "She's a force of nature." Henry replied with a tired sigh. "But maybe tonight was the first crack in the armor she's built around herself." The next morning, the mansion was different. The staff moved with a strange new energy, their usual caution replaced by a quiet satisfaction. Vivien was nowhere to be seen. Gregory passed Lily in the hallway and gave her the smallest of nods. "Well done," he murmured, though she'd never admit to doing anything at all. Days later, Henry called her to his study. "I wanted you to know," he said, "that after the gala, Vivien agreed to take a step back from running everything. She's traveling for a while. The house feels lighter already." Lily smiled politely. "And," Henry added, sliding an envelope across the desk, "I'd like you to oversee the household in her absence. You've shown more honesty in a month than most have in a lifetime." Lily opened the envelope. Inside was not only a raise but also a letter of recommendation so glowing it almost didn't feel real. 2 months later, when Vivien returned, something in her had changed. She still carried herself like royalty. But there was a flicker of humility now, the kind that comes from knowing the world has seen you stumble. And though she never thanked Lily, she never tried to intimidate her again. Sometimes the most powerful change comes not from grand speeches or open defiance, but from small, quiet acts of truth. The world may fear those who demand perfection, but in the end, it only takes one honest voice to remind everyone that even the most untouchable are human,